There are entire industries made on the idea of transforming yourself. If you talk about like hair commercials or beauty products, they're all about like how you need to transform yourself. Make yourself more beautiful or some other sort of ridiculous false claim. And, as we look at today's feast, this is remembrance in the second week, this great transformation of Jesus. I think there's a temptation that we say, yep, see, Jesus gets transformed, and so that's what we need too. It's what's going to happen. But I think we actually need to understand the transfiguration in a lot of different contexts. But just so you know that you're not alone in foolish ideas of transformation, one of my more foolish moments was when I was a sophomore in high school. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever had this idea of like having like highlights in your hair. It's almost as if you can see where this is going. So we had one of my best friends, he's still a very good friend of mine, his sister was in beauty school, right? And so as a sophomore boy, my first thought was like, oh, there it is. I can get my hair highlighted and, she's going to do it for cheap. And you get exactly what you pay for in some of these situations. Because at a point, I went first, and so we pulled my hair through, and it was pretty long. It was longer than what it is right now. And we pulled my hair through the cap, and we highlighted, and it looked good. But then I was like, oh, but I need a haircut too. Wrong order. Just as a heads up, if you ever have this idea, make sure you cut your hair first and then do the highlights, because it looked like, after she was done, that I had a leopard print on the back of my head. Transformation. But the truth is, we do talk about how God works in our lives, but the most meaningful transformation, the most important transformations aren't these transformations that we get by getting a haircut or, getting like our hair dyed or anything. It's the transformation that takes a lot of hard work and time. Whether that's, in athletics in terms of like building up athletic skill, or whether that's kind of overcoming like a mental illness or, something like depression, something I know a little bit about, that, there is no magic pill. There is no magic transformation. There's no prayer that says, boom, I no longer have depression. Boom, I'm all better, I'm all healed, right? That just simply doesn't exist. No matter how much I prayed for it, that definitely wasn't how God wanted to transform me. It was actually taking time and doing the little daily tasks, the little daily moments in which at a certain point, and I'm not even sure I can tell you the exact date, but there was a day when I opened up the shades to my room and I realized that something had transformed. Something was different. It was a combination of medication. It was a combination of getting out and running more and eating better and sleeping better and expanding my network of friends and family that I could rely upon. It was actually asking for help. It was all of those little steps, but I remember there was a day that's just like, whoa, has the sun always been shining? And in the same way, I think that's the context of what happens today in the Transfiguration. It is not a magic moment in which Jesus is somehow transformed and something other than what he already was. And it doesn't come outside of a context of a lot of hard work. We don't hear this because of Lent and the way this falls in Luke's gospel, but Luke, just before this pericope, the part we hear in today's gospel, actually talks about, has Jesus for the first time telling his disciples he has to die in order to be raised again. He has to suffer in order to participate in this mystery. Right, so this transformation doesn't just happen because it's a good day, the sun is nice, they go climbing on a hill, and they decide to say, whoa, look at this is amazing. Boom, instantaneous transformation. It is in the context of the hard work of the mission of Christ. And that invitation comes on the heels of the Sermon on the Plain, sort of Luke's version of how to be a good Christian, how to live this life that we're being called to do, and it is those daily small tasks. It's the little transformations that allow us to one day, I hope each of us have an opportunity to have a revelation like that, whether it's with your own, mental health concerns or with your own body, with your own confidence, with your own love, with everything, whatever it happens to be. I really do hope that this is an experience that each of us can participate in, but it doesn't happen without work. It doesn't happen outside of any real context. We don't become smart because one day we wake up and it happens. It still hasn't happened for me, and I've been working at it, That there's a small daily participation in the work of God. And this is what gets highlighted here because Peter, James, and John, the sort of inner circle of the disciples, they go up there, and in this moment, they think they understand. And I love the subtle, tiny correction that happens here. It's almost sort of so magnificent you miss it because we miss some of the cues and some of the language that's happening here. Because one of the most common tropes in the Old and the New Testament is the act of dreaming. Right? In those moments of dreaming, like Abram in today's first reading has sort of a trance, almost dreamlike. The Hebrew actually sort of suggests that it's kind of a dream, but not a dream, right? And for the ancient world, that state, that in-between state between being fully awake and totally asleep was this mystical dream space, this mystical space that was neither completely awake or asleep, and therefore something powerful happened, right? And so the ancient world said, this amazing moment is where God connects with us. This amazing moment is where we receive the information, right? And so in today's first reading, that dream leads Abram to witness the covenant that God makes with all of humanity, all of the descendants of Abram. And what I love about that is it's a kind of, covenant ceremony that usually has two people walking through. You cut these animals in half, and you basically say, kind of not too subtly, hey, if you break this covenant, this is your fate. And so both parties are generally invited to walk through to say, hey, I'm holding you accountable, you hold me accountable. But what I love about this is the only person who walks through to make this great covenant is not humanity, it is God. God says, I'll hold myself accountable. I will make this deep, incredibly powerful covenant with you. And we see that he promises Abram all kinds of things. Descendants as numerous as the stars, land as far as the eye can see, this sort of wonderful invitation. But Abram wasn't transformed in that moment. He doesn't get his new name for a few more chapters, and the reason is because there's that still slow work of God. Perhaps today is a monumental day because you choose to make a difference, and I don't want to minimize that. Anyone who says today's the day I'm going to become sober, or today is the day that I'm going to determine to run a marathon, or today is the day that I'm going to bake the best cookies ever, I'll be a good judge of that. Whatever happens to be, that's the start, but it is not the work itself. And that's the invitation of Lent, is constantly being mindful of that invitation to keep working. Because even when we think we have it, and we fast forward to Peter, James, and John, and they have this trance-like sort of sleep that is induced on them as Jesus is there with Moses and Elijah. And the mistake that Peter makes is, it's good that we're here, let's build 3 tents, equal tents. Let's build these 3 tents because Jesus is another great prophet, and this is as good as it gets. And like that first covenant, God says, no, it gets better. This is my chosen son, my beloved son, as we hear in the Gospels of Mark and Matthew. This chosen son is the one that I am inviting you to follow, and follow him. Listen to him. You now have even more daily tasks to participate in what goes from basically the middle of the Gospel of Luke all the way to the Passion. This sort of moment is not about this instantaneous transformation that makes it happen. It is a reminder of the little ways in which the disciples are now informed without any question who it is that they're being invited to follow. And this today, my friends, is what we should hear. That there is no mistake about who we're being invited to follow. It is not another good person. It is not another prophet. It's not another nice idea of something long ago. We are invited today, my friends, to follow the living person of Jesus. The transfigured one, prefigured here. The one who stands above the prophets as part of this process. This is the one that we are being invited to follow. And if we think that that's just going to happen for us, Scripture doesn't give us that answer. It doesn't say that. Scripture reminds us that it is always in these daily little acts of turning towards God, and the word that gets used is righteousness. Unfortunately, that's a bad translation, because the real meaning and definition of that is right relationship. Righteous, to be righteous is to do what is necessary for the relationship. You are righteous not because you are good, but because you are doing a good relationship. And thus, so it's not just righteousness to be sort of like bigger and more proud than other people. It's I am righteous only if I'm in right relationship with God. Peter gets corrected. The scary storm envelops him and says, "This is my son." We sometimes get corrected in those daily tasks. And so we have the letter of St. Paul, right? This wonderful letter saying, hey, follow my example, put your head down, get to work, because this is what we need to do. This is the task at hand. This is the invitation. Christianity and being a Christian and being a follower of Jesus is not something that we just sort of put on and say, boom, I got it, I'm done. All right, everybody, I'm a Christian now, thanks, have a good day, right? No, it is, I put on a Christian outfit today, and that means you all get to hold me accountable. That's tough. Right? Father Warren joked about how he didn't want to let everyone know what he was giving up for Lent, but that's not vulnerability, that is accountability. You know, if I told you I'm going to run a marathon, and I have, you guys have done something amazing. You keep coming and say, hey, Father, how's the training going? How's the running going? How you doing, you know? And when I couldn't run the marathon this last fall because I'd gotten injured, you guys could give me the care that I needed. Like, hey, you know what? It happens. I'm glad you took care of yourself. I'm glad you didn't try to push it. You know, all those things. Like when we open ourselves to be accountable to the community, it is not just because, oh, they're going to correct me, but there's also a great deal of care in the words that are happening when we open ourselves to that moment. It's these daily little tasks. It's these daily little decisions. But I hope each of you, in your daily decisions, has a moment in which you are completely aware of your own transformation, a transformation towards good and to loving God.